Seasons are beginning all across the country for our favorite animal to hunt. Maybe your favorite animal, it is mine. I'm pretty one-sided when it comes to hunting. I love to hunt whitetails. Turkeys are pretty cool in the spring. Grouse in the fall, when I used to live up in the UP of Michigan, but boy, my heart's with whitetails and I love to hunt them. And I look at that, these seasons are beginning and a lot of seasons are ending soon because people are practicing poor hunting methods. And I think we really need to discuss when to sit in a tree stand all day. And I talked about this in another video and I've talked about in the past too, but you'll see a table spread out with all this garbage that people are taking in the woods, sandwiches, snacks, games, whatever it is, stuff to drink, they're putting a pack in. Well, for one, and Dylan can attest to this, Dylan, do I like big backpacks in the stand?
No, I've been reduced to a hand muff for camera batteries and that's it.
What?
That's it.
That sounds harsh.
It is.
You have Dylan has a camera arm over one shoulder and a camera over the other, and then batteries in his hand warmer. And so Matt Reed from HuntWise, if you're watching this and you're coming out to film and hunt, you know, sit in the stand with me September 18th and 19th. Hope you're paying attention to this. But I don't allow big packs in the stand because they look like another person. You know, Dylan and I, we were out there and we had a big pack. It's like there's 3 people sitting in the stand. When I go out and I have my camera, I have a small backpack. I carry just the basics that I need, and it's a dark backpack. It goes against the back of the tree, maybe under my seat. It folds up, but it's very small, very slight, and it's pretty cool to post all that stuff on social media. And I look at it and I think, man, I just don't have time for that. You know, I don't have time. I take a big drink of water before I go out. I might carry a couple gel packs if my sugar's getting low or something like that. I do carry a sandwich or something during opening day, but a lot of times that's what pockets are for. There's tons of pockets on these bibs and jackets nowadays. So regardless, all day sit. You're gearing up for this all day sit. It makes for good pictures on social media, but bottom line, is it a wise choice? So I wanted to discuss when to sit, actually all day sit. The early season, we'll just cover that real quick. Deer are hitting evening food sources very heavily, and they're doing it consistently. In the morning, if you go try to sit in that same food source stand the deer are moving to, you have no idea where those deer are at. A lot of times they're around those food sources in the morning. They could be in their bedding areas. You don't know. You go in there and spook out your hunt. The one high surefire hunt is in the evening. So if you're going in the morning and sitting in that same evening stand, you have the great potential for spooking out deer and ruining that evening opportunity. Might be better to be patient and not hunt in the morning. I like hunting in the morning in transition areas in the early season. If I do, we have a spot that we're looking for a big buck we call Venti. And if he comes through, there's a spot, there's a corner, it's open woods where the deer don't bed and they don't feed. It's a corner I can get into through non-food source areas where I feel pretty confident that I can get into that location. And if those patterns continue to develop into the early season, you could bet I'll take a morning sit in that area. And that might even be an evening sit if they're coming through, but those deer aren't going to move during the middle of the day. It's hot. There's no need to sit during the middle of the day. They're moving the last couple hours, it's at least mature bucks, last 3 hours, maybe in the morning, but that's a very special stand in a very special location. If you're hunting those evening food source stands, you should never be there in the morning. If you're hunting a bedding area, you should never be there in the evening because deer are leaving your position. So early season, no. Very, very unlikely that you'll have that perfect stand. And I'm not saying we have a couple out of 30 that would work, you know, for an all day potentially sit, but then I'm wasting the whole afternoon where I should be taking a nap in the early season. The October lull, it's the same thing. Don't ever believe in the lull. We have, you know, the myth of the October lull. It's just not true. A lot of times the October lull starts after hunters have gone into the woods and spooked deer. And then all of a sudden there's a lull. If you have green food sources and acorns are dropping, deer are going to consistently hit those green food sources in the evening, and they'll do it because they've been eating on acorns all day. They want to hit those food plots. However, if you've spooked out those food plots, if you've hunted the food plots, if you've blown your scent into deer 1 or 2 times in the early season, those deer won't be there in the evening. They'll give you the feeling that the October lull is already there. When you get into the October lull, think about it, deer have been kind of beat down a little bit. We have high hunter numbers in Minnesota, Wisconsin, Michigan, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Indiana, New York. You can just go all the way across. A lot of high numbers in these northern states. And even when you get down into Tennessee, West Virginia, there's areas where there's a lot of deer hunters. And a lot of times those deer are back in their bedding areas before it even gets close to daylight. So you try to go hunt a morning stand, they're out. If you try to hunt a transition stand, there's a potential you're spooking them when you're going in the morning. So you really, while take a chance in the morning in the early season, I don't take a chance in the October lull. I'm really focusing on those cold fronts and evening quality feeding opportunities, call them feeding fronts. And those are great times to shoot a buck that's wanting to get to some green quality food source, even on clear cuts and vegetation. Forbs and forages are growing on public land in a clear cut, sun exposed areas, an apple tree, something like that in the evening. Highly predictable sits, highly predictable hunts. You really should focus more on evening and maybe not even take a chance in the morning on October lull, because the pre-rut is just around the corner. And during the pre-rut, number 3 here, that's when I hit my morning stands for the first time. If you have cameras on water holes and you start to see big bucks cruising at 10 o'clock in the morning, that'll take place consistently here in southern Wisconsin and Minnesota over to southern Michigan, right around October 20th, October 22nd, 24th. You'll see those pictures start popping up. And it's interesting, they're popping up during the coldest times of the year, during those first morning 30 some degrees, 40 degrees. They're hitting water holes because it's cold, and that means they're moving more. And just like if you guys played sports, if you played fall sports, spring sports, it's cold out. If you move a lot, you get thirsty. Obviously, we drink during the summer, but a lot of times I'm just sitting in the air conditioning somewhere, and if I'm relaxing, don't need to drink a lot, even though it's hot out. So think about that. Deer moving consistently in the mornings during the pre-rut, but they don't move during the day. They move a lot during the morning hours, but then they get tired. Deer can't just keep moving 24/7. Even a mature buck during the rut, he's got to take a break. So when those mornings are 32 degrees, 29 degrees, 38 degrees, and then it warms up to 60, 61, 62, they lay down, take a nap, and then they move a little bit in the evening. Completely different stands. I'll hunt pre-rut morning stands, rut morning stands during the pre-rut, and then I flip over to find an evening food source where I can find more of that funnel of deer movement. As many trails are coming into one food source location, I stay off that food source, maybe on a water hole, always a mock scrape at every one of my bow stand locations. And that way you're separating out where you're hunting, and that's a great way to maximize the value of the entire day by sitting in separate stands. If you're sitting in one, you're hurting yourself, you're creating a 0 out of 10 situation for that morning or evening sit. And if you're going into a evening stand, which is a food source stand in the morning, you have a great potential of spooking deer out. If you go into a bedding area in the afternoon, you don't know where those deer are at, you're spooking them, and I'm saying on the downwind edge of a bedding area, but you're spooking them in the afternoon because you don't know where they're bedded. You have the luxury of a morning stand, knowing where deer are at around you. You just sat there for 4 hours, you just saw some deer feed through, and you can get out safely. Not so when you go in the afternoon blind. So that's why there's definite morning stands, definite evening stands, but not all day during the pre-rut. Then we get into the lockdown and peak rut. There are all day stands out there, and this is the time when deer moving. Lockdown, you never know when that buck's gonna come off his first doe. All bucks participate in breeding. They breed 2 to 4 deer each season, or at least in that primary rut, or 2 to 4 does. And you never know when that buck is coming off his first doe. And so you want to be out there all day, because as soon as he gets off that first doe and he leaves, he's going to start searching. So the rut lockdown, which would be around November 1st, Southern Ohio, West Virginia, Tennessee, Oklahoma, that might be more like November 5th, somewhere around there, November 10th, November 15th. But bottom line is, there's areas where you can sit all day in one stand, but it has to be that perfect X. I like it back in heavy cover. I like it between bedding areas, but also between food sources. So you have your between bedding, your between food sources, you have that perfect X of movement where deer are coming in from all different angles, and you can sit all day and have an opportunity to see good buck movement. How many stands are like that? How many stands are good for all day? Well, we have over 30 stands and blinds in 2 states, and I would say 2, 3, 4 at the most are all day stands. And a lot of times, I can see a value in a stand, maybe 8 or 10 of them, that could be an all-day stand, depending on what's going on. But there's a better evening stand that's pure evening, and there's a better morning stand that's pure morning. So I'd rather get a 10 out of 10 with both sets than sit in an all-day stand that gives me a 7 or a 6 in the morning and a 7 or a 6 in the evening. Think about that. Number 6 right here, score the sit. And this is where you really look hard at morning and evening stands and say, Where's my best stand based on the current sign and movements, maybe trail cam photos, maybe where your neighbors are hunting. We've actually driven by neighbors in the morning to see if their gate's open or not, because if their gate's open, that means they're hunting, that means they're spooking deer to a certain area of the property. That means we change where we hunt, or maybe our strategy of what stands we're going into. But look really definitively at morning and evening stands. Is this the best morning stand for your sit? Is this the best evening stand for your sit? And what you'll find is 90% of the time, it isn't in the same stand for both morning and evening. There is that 10% opportunity. I would say that's about what it ranks for us. And then depending on situations, you might have a stand that's good for all day because of external circumstances, because of sign you're seeing, because of a new buck moving in, a new buck pattern, whatever it might be. But consider when going in for an all-day sit. I sit during the rut lockdown, peak rut, post rut is okay. Secondary rut can be okay, but then secondary rut, even the post rut, I find they're more into pre-rut, where they're moving a lot in the morning, they're moving to evening food sources, they're following does in the evening. So even then, a lot of times I'm separating out my stands because I want to get the most out of it. Even if you only have the resources for 2 stands, try to find one that's evening related, one that's morning. Learn the difference between the two, and we talk about that within a lot of our strategies, and go in and hunt and enjoy the day, enjoy the sit. Remember to score your sits. Gun season openers, I sit all day. I go into a thick area a lot of times with my bow in Wisconsin, and I'm back in the area where I can only shoot 40, 50 yards at the very most, usually 20, 30. And I sit all day in one spot, because if you move on a small parcel on gun season and opening day, you're pushing deer off your property. That's why I go get deer that I shoot. I go get them after dark if the weather's good, because I don't want to spook deer to the neighbors on opening day. Score your sit, and you'll find that you have very few all-day tree stands to sit in. But not only that, if you score the sit, you're going to be a better hunter. And while you're at it, maybe not bring that extra person in your stand with this giant backpack. Learn to be efficient with the gear that you bring in. Dylan is incredible with his camera skills, videography. He gets in and out. I barely know he's in the tree, and that's a good thing. You know, he's supposed to blend, but it's not just Dylan. You're supposed to blend as a hunter too. And less is more when it comes to sits, choosing your time wisely, what gear you bring in the stand, how much motion, how much space you're taking up. And if you use these questions and answers to determine when to sit all day this fall, you'll be a better deer hunter, not only this season, but for years to come. Well, I'm real excited, folks. I appreciate you watching this video, but my next web class, How to Plant Food Plots, How to Design Your Food Plot Program, is out. And it really goes through a step-by-step process for not only how to plant your food plots, but why you should plant them, where you should plant them, what you should plant, how you should create them. There's a lot of different modules. Ends up about 30 videos altogether. I urge you to check that out. We're out here completing our food plot work today, and we do that in a pretty strict pattern so we can find success this fall. Food plots shouldn't be a guessing game. Take the guesswork out of food plots and food plots planting, and check out the web classes. I have my How to Design Your Whitetail Property, the food plots for the next web class in the series, and I hope you enjoy it. I hope you check it out, and let me know what you think if you end up purchasing that, and I think you'd be well pleased that you did.